Okay, everyone, the reason why we're doing this quick lecture is because we're going to do the Central American Court of Justice. Now, why are we doing the Central American Court of Justice? Because I wrote it, because I'm egotistical and I need your attention. Yes, but also it's very, very important. This is where I did research for it. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore. La Universidad Centroamericana. This is the area of the Instituto de Historia that doesn't exist anymore because the government is a little insane. But regardless, this is a very, very important article. Why? Because I wrote it? Yes. But also, you know, Central America is considered like banana republics, right? It's an unfortunate term, etc. But yet they were the first, before we get into real international law, the first regional court to which all states would suspend their sovereignty. Right there, that's very, very important, right? Because they had a series of wars that, you know, we had peace movements going on at the time, early 1900s. So Carnegie actually, from the United States, funded the court, helped create it and stuff, and the United States became the guarantor. But you know where this is going. That happens. But why is this important? Well, it actually dealt with a number of issues that are very, very important, which you're going to read about in this article and be quizzed on, that all states deal with. The law of the sea, bases, right? Previous treaties you're going to learn about when you read this article. So when you look at the court case, this is actually the beginning and the incipience of a lot that came about in international law. Remember, this is before the League of Nations, the United Nations, the ICJ, etc. So, you know, we think of Central America as being poor, etc., but do they have anything to offer? And in international law, yes. So as you read this, the first court case is very, very important because it dealt with all these issues from the law of the seas, bases, our bases threatening, Costa Rica, among other countries, cited earlier treaties where Nicaragua couldn't have these bases. This is when Nicaragua was very friendly with the United States. And remember, we're dealing with the Panama usually is kind of out because that was part of Colombia and we kind of created Panama for the Panamanian Canal. So we're dealing with the big ones. We're dealing with Nicaragua, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Honduras, and Guatemala. And they actually wrote their judges very, very strong cases, both sides of the first case, based on international law and international relations scholarship. And by drawing upon everything from the law of the sea, the idea of military bases being threatening, and treaties, earlier treaties that said Nicaragua couldn't engage in such behavior with the United States is very, very important. But the problem is, by the time you get to different cases, the court was being very, very independent. And the United States doesn't like that. No independence, as you're going to see in the Niher coup. Like, do we really care about democracy? Or do we care about alliances? And this is where you get into international law, and we did the sovereignty, compliance, etc. Do states follow international law? And this Central American Court of Justice in the early 1900s showed that states do, particularly smaller states. And why? Because they have a more self-interest in the system. Bigger states, the UK, United States, you know, China, Russia, etc., they don't. And when we get into the use of force, I mean, obviously the attack on the Ukraine has been brutal, and I don't think they follow international law. But a lot of these smaller states do, and that's where you get the Central American Court of Justice. So what happened to the Central American Court of Justice? Well, unfortunately, in the last case, it ruled against the United States, and the United States didn't like that. And it stopped being the guarantor. Nicaragua didn't sign back on to the Central American Court of Justice, and it just kind of petered out after its 10-year term. But even though it disbanded, that doesn't mean the court cases it dealt with aren't important. And that's what you need to read about. Like, what is the importance of this case? Now, I laid out like treaty, bases, law of the sea, but I do want you to start reading kind of dense articles, because a lot of you take the course because you want to go to law school, graduate school, etc. And these peer reviews are very important to start reading to kind of get the main gist. You don't have to know every word when you read peer reviews. You don't need to, I mean, they're very dense, sometimes boring. You know, it's ready for publication when it's very boring. But you will have to be reading these more dense pieces of material. So you want to kind of get the gist of it, and I'll be asking questions on the quiz. Okay, what was this? What was the contention in the first case? You know, how was it resolved? What did they draw upon? We saw treaty, bases, international law. All these things are very, very important for the cases that developed within the Central American Court of Justice. And it also kind of undermines that negative centralization of banana republics, where we think, oh, they have nothing to offer. But this was actually the first regional court to which countries would suspend their sovereignty and actually listen to a court. So it's very, very important to begin with. And then when we get into the international law book, which is very thick, we're going to get into a lot of whole cases. You won't have to know everything, but the main themes of international law. So I just wanted to touch upon that, the Central American Court of Justice, the article I wrote. And then obviously I also did the South-South relations, can regional organizations and regional deals help solve conflict, peace, and economic development. And that's part of this course of international organizations and law. And then for the second part, which is a longer part, we deal with the international law book. If you do want to study law, get used to, or even graduate school, these kind of thick, dense readings. So thanks a lot for listening to this short lecture, and take care, everyone.